So to both of you guys, I have to know, since you guys are married in real life, you work together so closely. How did you divide responsibilities on set, or did you work through it all together?
Yeah, pretty much we decided early on that we would just do everything kind of functionally together. And, some teams like somebody talks to camera and somebody talks to the talent, and we just didn't do that. We had if somebody had a good beat on what was going on or like a real big idea they would lead, but it's nice when, we've like renovated houses and have a child and been together for 15 years. So it's like our taste is pretty similar. So it's sort of like one brain anyway.
David, so what inspired you to merge the, I mean, it has different genres. It's like funny and thrilling and kind of scary. What inspired you to go through all those genres, and how did you best maintain that balance throughout the film?
Well, at the root of it, the first act of the story is pretty autobiographical to an experience that Brian and I had in adopting our child. And once that happened to us, we first realized it could be a really great horror film. And then being the two of us, there's no way to not bring comedy into it because we just would riff off of each other and do bits after bits and just see how far you can go. And I think that's the sort of line we had to toe during it was like, how far can you take these characters while also being able to um, retroactively pull them back and get them back on the audience's side. And so that was sort of like throughout the entire process how we did that. And obviously, when you hire two people like Nick and Andrew, you're never not going to get the most hysterical thing ever devised.
Nick and Andrew play Dom and Cole, the main characters, and they are obviously reflective of you two because it's like autobiographical outside of the key stuff, hopefully. So how did you approach writing those characters? And Brian, I'll throw this one to you. How did you approach writing these characters? And what's it like to kind of write people who are kind of based off of you, but like not really?
I think the way that we approached it was kind of making fun of each other or sort of like finding the kind of like cracks in our personality and our kind of limitations and then exploiting them for our own amusement. We wrote the movie during the pandemic, so we were kind of like trapped in our house with this idea. And as soon as we started, it felt very natural and kind of fun to just be, to kind of like make fun of each other, make fun of ourselves and each other, and the kind of like, and also like the way Americans travel abroad and need to be coddled and feel special and feel safe. And, all of those things were kind of fun to approach with, uh, to approach in a silly way.
I think when you're writing something, I think when you're writing something that is so personal to you, it's really actually relieving to take those characters out of your own voice and turn them into something else too. Because there's a bit of freedom in that where you don't have to stick too closely to the narrative at hand, and you can just have fun with making fun of each other and writing each other's voices.
And so I was just, asking before the interview, but wondering like what is in a name, at least when you are writing these characters, is there some like significance to naming these people? Like how'd you come up with Dom and Cole as the character names?
Well, I think Dom came out of the idea that Brian is Italian and Jewish, and I think the first thing we thought of was just like what uh what's like the most fun Italian name we can get, and we just settled on
Also, it's a
Domenico.
fun name to hear people scream.
Yeah.
It has a kind of percussiveness, like just, and yeah, I think that is useful.
And I think I truly that like the first scenes we wrote were hysterical scenes, and I think just having single syllable names are a lot more fun to scream than like if Samantha. No, it's like just screaming out Dom and Cole are really fun.
The film plays off of like this huge escalation that comes off of like all these other things. Was there, when you were designing all of this, did you have like a specific moment in mind, as in like this is where we want our characters to end, this is what we want like these bad things to happen, or did it like kind of evolve where you're like, oh, this thing happened so this thing could happen? Like how did you guys engineer that?
So we have a very particular writing style, which is that we like to know the characters and their sort of problem or situation, and then not know what's going to happen much beyond that, and kind of write our way through it. Um, and that way you're sort of not adhering to an outline, and that gets kind of boring and kind of makes you just kind of hit the milestones that you've laid out, versus going like, what's the worst thing that could happen to these characters next, and then what's the worst thing, and then how do they get out of it. So we kind of always approach it as much as we can like that. So we kind of knew where we wanted the movie to end, but we didn't know how we were going to get there beyond putting in this pickle and then kind of working through it.
So, you know, Nick and Andrew, they are great in the movie. How did you cast them? What was it like working with them? And also, how did you develop out the relationship? Because it does feel so natural in the film, which I found so fascinating.
Well, you know, we like we said, we were doing this during the pandemic, and we got a producer on, our friend Cara Durrett, and we went out to cast it. And the first person we approached was Andrew, and he loved the material and wanted it. And while we were on the phone, we weren't thinking we were going to do it right away, but like we just softball pitched Nick to him to find out if that's something he would want us to do, and go after Nick. And before we could even get it to Nick's representation, Andrew had sent it to him, and by the next week we had both of them on board. So it was pretty seamless when it comes to that. And something we didn't realize, I mean, probably gut realized, but didn't actually put two and two together, is like they both come from very distinct comedy duos. Andrew with Josh Gad, and Nick with John Mulvaney, and so they both, working with them, both of them really knew how to share, rather than needing to, always take the spotlight or always sit back. Like they knew how to share, and they would be like, "Oh, wouldn't this line be better on him than on them?" And we would always, we would get what was written on page, but we would also let. Obviously, they're both amazing comedians, and can, think of funny stuff off the cuff. So we would always let them have a fun take, in which they could just play around with anything. And quite a number of that, wound up, a number of those scenarios wound up in the movie. So it was a glorious time. And we also realized we wrote a script in which our two main characters are on screen together 98% of the movie. So you really have to like each other, and they love each other, which is great.
Yeah, that's so cool to hear about how they like Andrew recruited Nick, and it I love hearing about like the collaborative way in which you guys made the film. And I have to wonder, when it gets like tough, when you guys would have creative disagreements, how did you get over that? Or did that just not happen because you two are
I
just
would just fire Brian. Like
Yeah, he fired me a lot.
I fired Brian at least 5 times, I think, over the movie, and I gave him COVID so that he had to like sit a couple days out.
Yeah, that's true. No, I
Um,
mean, I think the real answer is, we decide you never want to, you never really, disagreement is the enemy of creativity. And you never know until the edit room what you're going to need or do. And so we decided if we ever had ideas that were really divergent on a way to approach a scene, that we would just shoot both and then we would figure it out in the cut. It didn't really happen that much because our taste is pretty similar, like I said, um you always do want to get options on stuff when you're shooting, and different performance takes, different practical takes. So we would do that kind of thing. And the best way, I have found to work is just not to be very prescriptive about what you're doing in on set. Like just try to gather as much as you can, and then, within a range that makes sense, obviously. But then when you're in the cut, that's where you really kind of make the movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool. You guys are just perfect for each other, and like obviously the collaborative sense too.
Let's not go crazy.
um, so I guess sort of going into like some of the more production related stuff. Italy, what was it like to shoot there? Did that propose, or what logistical problems did that have, or like what opportunities did it open up that you might not have thought of?
It
Yeah,
was
I think a
great.
lot. It was absolutely wonderful shooting there. I think a lot of the experience that happens in the movie is actually how we shot it too, where it's, clearly the language barrier was probably the most difficult element to work through because it was literally seven Americans and 150 some odd Italians working on this. So we clearly were making an Italian movie in English um, with a lot of Italian people who didn't speak English, including some cast members. So I think the language was definitely the hardest part. But the culture there is so familial in the sense that like if they're coming to work on a project, they treat it as a project, not just as a job. So everybody on set, including like the grips or the electricians, had read the script and knew what we were making, knew what we were shooting. And everybody just treated it really with so much honor and excitement. And I think that's from shooting stuff in the States. It was just such a breath of fresh air to work with a bunch of people who really truly love showing up to work every day.
Also, when you're shooting there, what was nice is like all this stuff in Rome was kind of we had a long time to prep the movie where we were there, and so you'd just be like wandering around for lunch, and then you'd be like, oh, we could this is the restaurant, let's use this one, and this is a cool alley, and we could do this, and it just had a sort of very organic feeling to it because if we were shooting sort of on our home turf, we would already have a lot of these decisions made about where we wanted to be, but we wrote the movie kind of blind to the logistics of it, which was great, and then we could kind of find it in the process.
What are you guys currently working on? Like, what do you have planned next? And is it going to be, if you're making another film, is it going to be similar in either themes or genre to this one, or something different?
We have a couple things that we're working on. One particular is we wrote our version of a Christmas movie, which is in the same genre vein as I Don't Understand You, and it's basically what would happen if uh all of the emotional violence your family puts on you during the holiday season was physicalized. And so we have that one written, and we're currently working on getting that one made. So that's along with a couple other things, that's a really exciting project for us.
Brian? I
Oh
guess.
yeah. Yeah, that and no, I mean everything that we're doing sort of has a similar feeling. We're kind of interested in characters in an untenable position that where they make a series of bad choices and have to figure out who they are through the process of digging out of it. So yeah, that's sort of where we are.